Now, what about the behavior aspect of, because you talked on that a little bit, and I've kind of always had this, I'd be curious to get your thoughts on it. I've always talked about like, at least for me, for breaking addictions and changing behavior, that it's like I always think of it as like a rubber band. It's like you try to stop a behavior with willpower, and it's like pulling that rubber band back. Eventually, it's going to snap, and it's going to snap back the other direction hard, right? And
Mm.
so, but changing the nature, like when you change yourself, and I think we talked about this a little bit about the identity, for me has always
Mhm.
been something that is like when my identity changes, then my behavior automatically changes. How does that, or what's your take on that? I'm just curious.
So I talk about this more in chapter 2,
Mm,
and the distinction I make is between outcome-based habits and identity-based habits. And
okay.
so an outcome-based habit is what I would say is a behavior that's organized towards getting a particular result. So for example, this is usually how we try to approach something. We say, all right, I want to earn 6 figures next year. And so my plan for earning 6 figures is to follow these steps. And that's usually it. There's like the outcome, the result that you want, and then there's the plan of action for achieving it. This is very standard. You set a goal and then you try to come up with a plan for achieving that goal. But I would say that there's actually one layer deeper, which is your identity. And this is the set of beliefs and biases, the values and principles, your self-image, so to speak. And your self-image is pretty much underlying every behavior that you perform. And once you have adopted a particular self-image, then it becomes very easy to just like reinforce that by falling into the same kind of behavior patterns again. So you come up with a new plan or a new goal for what you want to achieve, but you haven't shifted the way that you look at yourself. And so you end up sabotaging that new plan or just falling back into your old patterns. To use your language, the rubber band snaps back to what your identity is. So the question that I had was, all right, if that's true, I think that it is true. There's a lot of evidence. There's also a good body of psychological research that shows that how you self-identify, in other words, what your identity is or what you believe your identity is, has a meaningful impact on your behavior.
Right.
And that's usually measured with your personality traits. Like you self-identify as having a certain type of personality, and then your behaviors tend to match whatever you think your self-image is. But anyway, the question I had was, well, how can we change that? Can we design that in a meaningful way? Like, can you become someone new?
Right.
And well, you definitely can, because it's happening all the time. Like the person that I am today is very different than the person I was 10 years ago. So then the question is, all right, well, we're already shifting throughout life. Can we do it in some meaningful way? Can we like design that process? And the conclusion I came to is that identity is kind of like a feedback loop. So you come into the world and you don't have any beliefs about culture, society, or anything. You learn these over time. And the way that you learn them is through the evidence that is accumulated. So for example, if you go to church every Sunday for 20 years, you believe that you are religious. If you study biology every Tuesday night for 20 minutes, you believe that you are studious. If you go to the gym, even when it's snowing, you believe that you're dedicated to fitness. And it's kind of like each action you take casts a vote for the type of person that you believe that you are. And as the evidence accumulates and you get more and more votes, effectively, it's like that identity or that aspect of your identity wins the election in your mind. And you start to adopt this sense of self-image associated with that. And so the way I think to shift your identity is to start casting new votes. So it's by building new habits. And so it's like, for a long time, I didn't believe that I was a writer. If you would have asked any of my professors in college or teachers in high school, like none of them would have said I was a great writer. I didn't think it was a big deal it wasn't a big part of my identity. But slowly, as I wrote a new article every Monday and Thursday, and I did that for years, I started accumulating all this evidence that I'm a writer. And now, I have a book, and I feel like now I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm a writer. And it's because I've accumulated that evidence. So every action you take is sort of like a vote for the type of person you want to become. And the more actions that you take in alignment with a certain identity, the more you adopt that. And the powerful thing is that identity really starts to impact that second stage, that craving stage, the predictions that you make. So for example, the same, identity can be developed in many different ways. So you can have, you can have beliefs like negative beliefs, like I'm bad with directions, or I'm terrible at math, or I'm a loser, or I'm bad at remembering people's names, or whatever. Like all of these are identities that people adopt. But then as they come across a situation, like let's say you have the identity or the belief, I'm bad at math. And then another person has the identity or the belief, I'm good at math. You can show these two people the same math problem, same cue, but then the craving, the prediction is totally different. And this happens all day long, especially with the news cycle. The same news story will run, and then a Democrat will see it one way and a Republican will see it another way. Same exact story, same exact information, but it's filtered in a totally different way based on their identity. And so it really changes the mindset that you have and the way that you interpret the cues in your life. And so if you can get an effective identity or a beneficial identity, maybe a more positive one, depending on what you're dealing with, well, then all of a sudden you see the same cue, but you see it in a totally different way. And one of my favorite examples of this is I heard the story of a guy who he was in a wheelchair, and someone came up to him and asked, like, are you upset? Like, what does it feel like to be confined by your wheelchair? And he said, I'm not confined by my wheelchair. I'm liberated by it. If I didn't have my wheelchair, I'd be in a bed all day. And it's like same exact cue, totally different interpretation. So the way that you identify and the beliefs that you carry around can have a really meaningful impact on your habits and how you respond to the cues in your life.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. I was just doing a video for someone the other or last night, and they're asking about how to the feeling like they couldn't get the mindset of being this like senior software developer, and they're like trying to how do I hack the mindset? I've read Tony Robbins, I've read Waking the Giant Within and all this, and I was talking about, and they're talking about imposter syndrome, and I was talking about how it's better, instead of having imposter syndrome, why don't we have delusions of grandeur? Delusions of grandeur are much better, because it's I was like, just pretend like you're already that person, and then if you want to be an Olympic swimmer, figure out what Michael Phelps does every day, right? And then start doing it, and then it'll take a while, but after a year or so, if you start training like Michael Phelps every day, you're going to be a badass. You're going to actually be that thing. So if you start acting as if you're already the person you want to be and taking those actions, your identity will change and conform to it. Because it's well, shit. I used to never run. I used to never write. Just like you were saying with the writing. But I was never a long distance runner. Then I started running every day. Running 10 miles, and then pretty soon I'm like, well, I guess I've run 15 half marathons or what. I guess I must be a runner now. And so that identity changed. But yeah, I love that approach of taking the action driving the vote, what you called it, those actions that
I think that's what you just said. I think is the right way to phrase it. The action drives the vote, and then as the votes get cast, the identity shifts. And I had a friend who she did this. She needed to lose a bunch of weight and has kept it off for over a decade now. And the way that she did it was she just started asking herself, what would a healthy person do? And she just repeat that question every single time she was making a choice. Like, would a healthy person call a cab or walk a mile to the destination? Or would a healthy person order a salad for lunch or get a burger and fries? And she was just doing this all day long. And then she was like, well, eventually if I keep making the answers that a healthy person would, then I'll be that person. And she was right. And I think that this is a good way to approach pretty much any goal. And the same thing that you said about the Michael Phelps situation.